gamers. Today, we're gonna be discussing a topic that's been around since the tier lists were invented in AoE4, which is pretty much from the get-go. Every time there's a tier list released by me or some other streamer or creator, if I say, this Civ is good, and like few more streamers are going to say, hey, that Civ is good, then within a week you see posts like, that Civ is unbeatable. That Civ is unbeatable. Nobody can beat it. Even the top players are saying it, right? After that, it starts with, how do you beat this Civ? This is unbeatable. And then it just starts to like balance complaining that it needs nerfs and that it needs that and it needs this or that. So I kind of wanted to discuss a little bit, what does S tier Civ mean? I'll call it in a pro level gameplay, and what does S tier Civ mean in casual level gameplay? I didn't know what to call it. I didn't want to call it Gold League because, if you're not pro player, you're not gold. You're, Conqueror 1 or Conqueror 2 or even low Conqueror 3, and then bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and diamond. And I feel like whenever these tier lists are released, people use the tier list like a copium excuse to why they are losing their games, which is just wrong. There's a reason why I do disclaimers whenever I make a tier list. This tier list is for top level gameplay only. This tier list does not impact your elo in any meaningful way, okay? There's a massive skill difference between top level gameplay, like top pros, and Conqueror 3. There's a massive skill difference between Conqueror 3 and Diamond. There's a massive skill difference between Diamond and Gold. And sometimes these tier lists overlap, right? With Gold League, for example. So if I put Rus, or let's say English is S tier, maybe English is also S tier in, casual level gameplay or gold level gameplay. But there's also discussion of how should we balance the civs based on 99% of the player base or the top 1%. The reason why RTS games have balancing around top level players is because we can usually execute those civs or gameplays or plays, whatever you want to call them, to almost the best of our abilities or the civ's ability. So this is why balancing is done around top level. Unit is too strong, build is too strong, economy is too strong. And there's a misconception when I see people saying, yeah, but balance in Gold League matters too. We're talking about two different things now, because the guy that says that is not talking about balance in Gold League. He's talking about how difficult and how easy something is to play, okay? Because if a Civ is S tier in Gold, it's not because it's overpowered, it's because it's usually easier to execute than some of the other Civs. So I'll give you guys an example of this that happens very often. China, for the longest time, I'll check the China win rate in Gold League, for example. Yeah, it's one of the bottom tier civs. And the reason I'm looking at stats, because I think that stats are more valuable in lower leagues than higher leagues, which I'll talk about later. So China, historically, in AoE4, has had almost the lowest win rate always in any season in low leagues. And the reason for that is because it's hard to play. It's not that China is a bad civ. Usually at the top level, it's almost always played in tournaments, but it's a hard civ to play. So in low leagues, because people cannot execute at that level, it usually performs pretty bad. Now, does that mean that China is underpowered and should get buffed? No. What it means is either there's a way to balance the game in lower leagues, which is either to make China a bit easier to play, which wouldn't impact the high level as much, or you could make other civs harder to play. So for the longest time, you had English and French top civs at the low levels, right? They were dominating for like a year and a half. And my suggestion was always not to necessarily nerf those civs, just make them a bit harder to play for the casual players, because that's the best nerf you can do for those two civs. Because making, Mass Knight or just longbows and going for it, it's very hard for people to deal with it, right? It's not that it's overpowered and unbeatable, because we don't see that kind of gameplay at top level. It's just that it's very easy to do, and actually defending in AoE 4, depending which civ you play, can be a lot harder than attacking. and not every Civ can attack as efficiently as longbows. So I see this very often where people's discussion on these tier lists and stuff goes into balance at the low level matters kind of thing. Yes, but that's not balance. That's we're talking about something else. I don't think unit stats should be changed. I don't think that percentages of economy should be changed because Joe in Gold League lost the game. I think you can make the Civ more approachable and maybe easier to play, but you should definitely not do game balancing based on Gold League because you will absolutely break the top level gameplay to extreme imbalances. So I mentioned overlaps. There's sometimes an overlap. Like what's shit at the high level is also shit at the low level. And I think a good example of that is French right now. It is probably the worst Civ at the high level. And if you look at the stats in Gold League, it's also worse there. So there's sometimes an overlap where that is true. But most of the time when we make these Civ tier lists, like 80% of the Civ tier list that's made is not what's happening in the low leagues. It's like a completely different thing. The meta is different. Even if people are copying the builds, they are not executing them as well. So the Civ is then not as good. Like if you're playing, for example, whatever, some Civ that requires like crisp execution, it might not be good as good as in low level, just because, 5 seconds delay here, 5 seconds there, and then the timings are completely off. One of the Civs that received a lot of attention recently, I feel like, regarding balance is HRE. And I don't know how many posts or comments in my Twitch chat as well, and in my YouTube, where recently I made a tier list and I put HRE, I think in B+, right? And people were like, no, it's S tier. Everyone is saying it's S tier. It's S tier. It's one of the best Civs in the game right now. It's Castle Rush is unbeatable. You cannot stop the Imperial Rush. And I'm like, where's this coming from? So if you want to know what's changed, is Prelate got 1 extra range on Inspiration, which affects first 4 minutes of the game, and not really that much. And then they got Marching Drills for free, right? That's it. Now, HRE, we've seen people fight with HRE in Feudal more, but the builds that people are usually complaining about, which is Marching Drills, you get it for free, is for like castle rushing, which is funny because if you rush castle with HRE and try to get relics, you don't need Marching Drills. You usually go into knights and then you get relics. So it's like people heard from someone, X or Y person, that HRE is S tier, and the only thing they heard is that, and they're just kind of running with it without even stopping to think. Like I've seen recently a post like HRE castle rushing is unstoppable, and I'm like, HRE castle rushing has been in the game since the very first day. Like that's been the go-to build, and absolutely nothing changed. I'm sure there were some changes, but I'm saying like in the last month or even 6 months, absolutely nothing's changed. It's exactly the same it's ever been, right? And 2 months ago, no one was even rushing a castle with HRE. No one was even playing it much in the ladder. And now people hear it's OP and they just kind of run with it, right? And we see this very often. If you look, HRE is at 50%. Iobit is at 55%. If you want to look at stats in Gold League, no one's talking about it, right? OTD has higher win rate than HRE, right? But the hottest topic on the block is how HRE is broken right now, which makes no sense at all. There's also, some people think, oh yeah, but okay, at low level people can execute it, but at the top level HRE is like unbeatable. That's definitely not the case. HRE is not terrible, but it's far from being overpowered. I feel like if people just focused more on their like gameplay instead of focusing on like what tier list said or what X or Y person said, they don't affect your level. Now, let's go back to the balancing in low leagues. The Civs, if I had to make a serious tier list, right? I think in low leagues, and that depends, right? Gold League players have certain issues, and then Platinum players have certain issues, but they learn certain things. Maybe they can deal with harassment a bit better. Than Diamond players can kind of do a sneaky timing. They're kind of improving. Diamond is a better version of platinum, platinum is a better version of gold, and so on. So the civs that are good at the top level are the civilizations that usually are hard to harass, that have some kind of timing that is borderline hard to stop, or if you don't stop it, you're at severe disadvantage, or civs that can be aggressive super early to the point where even if you don't do that much, there's a transition out of it. You know what I mean? Like, for example, English right now, the king opening, it's one of the strongest plays that you can do at high level. And the reason it's so strong is you open with a king, but you don't really rely on the king doing damage. So it feels like there's no downside to it. It feels like you can't really go wrong with it. Also, what's important at the top level is which civ can be played on as many maps as possible. So Rus has been an S tier civ for the longest time at the top level, and the reason for that is you can play Rus on any map. So when you do like a draft and there's 7 maps, the opponent doesn't know where you're gonna pick Rus, right? Which makes it a very strong pick as in your draft. Because some civs like Malian, you're gonna play it on like Dry Arabia, maybe like Rocky Canyon, and like, I don't know, Highview, right? It has a very limited map pool that you can play it. And also Malian has a few hard counters, so that makes it a not so great civ. And I'm talking about tournament play, right? I'm not talking about ladder. Abbasid is another civ that at its face value is not broken civ, but it is very strong currently in tournaments because you can play it on any map. Even some water maps you can play it, which makes it a very strong civ because of that. English, for the same reason, I think will be a very strong civ in the tournaments, because with the current build, it doesn't really have any weaknesses, and you can be played on water, yada yada. And then you have some civs where in the past, Mongol, for example, was dominating on water maps. So even though on the ladder, people never practice Mongol at the top level, but in tournaments, you would always see Mongol banned or picked. So just giving you guys a couple of examples. Now, why is, for example, Jushi's Legacy, if you look, Jushi's Legacy at Conquer 4, which is 1.70k plus, Jushi's Legacy has 57% win rate. And that looks really good, right? 57%, second highest win rate civ. That's crazy. But an interesting fact, in the last tournament that had over 100 games, I think, it was banned 0 times, and it was picked 0 times. Not once. Nobody picked it. Players got different styles, different strategies, different maps. Nobody's picked it once, right? And the reason why nobody's picked it is because there are better civs that are playing similar to Jushi's Legacy that can do the same thing. For example, China is very similar to Jushi Legacy, but China is better because of Barbican. If you want to go for a boom civ, there's also Abbasid as an option, right? If you want to go for some kind of harass civ into booming, JD is an option, right? You can make a knight, get a second TC, and you're still kind of macroing and harassing. So it makes it just a not very great civilization for tournament because it doesn't excel at anything. For the same reason why French is not only terrible for ladder, if you look at Conquer 4+, but in tournaments it is also, I think it was actually picked twice, but it's almost never picked in tournaments. Same with OTD. Because there's better civs that do what French does. For example, JD is better version of French style. Rus is better version of French style. So why would you play French when there's better stuff out there? And you have a limited amount of civs, limited amount of, civs you can pick in the tournament draft. So you don't want to waste it on French when you can pick all these other civs, right? If you want a boom civ, a castle rush civ, and let's say a knight civ, and you have any picks, you're going to pick Rus, you're going to pick Ayubid for a castle rush civ, and for a boom civ, you can pick China, right? Or Abbasid. So French is not even in top 15 of your picks. It's probably at the end. This is how picks and how bans, flashbang, work at the top level, and why some civs are completely ignored in tournaments, even though they are played on ladder. So again, you might look at this and be like, wow, Jushi is one of the best civs in the game. In Conquer 4, it has 57% win rate. It ain't the same. And then if you look at Ayubid, funnily enough, it has 50, not even 51% win rate. And Ayubid is I think the most banned and picked Civ right now in tournaments, or will be. And I think most top level players think Ayubit is either the best or the second best civilization. But the ladder stats don't support it because nobody gives a shit about ladder stats. And I think ladder stats are more true in lower leagues because A, the sample size is way bigger, and B, the players cannot execute everything to the full extent, but the skill level between, you know, Joe in Gold 1 and Joe and Bob in Gold 2 is much more similar than, for example, when I or Marine Lord play against rank 30 Conqueror. Rank 30 Conqueror will lose like 9 out of 10 times to us. So if I beat rank 30 Conqueror and he plays Ayubid and I play Jushi's Legacy, does that mean Jushi Legacy counters Ayubid? No. But in lower leagues, the skill difference is not that massive, so the stats are more better to look at, in my opinion. This is the last tournament, by the way, just so you guys can see, just to show you what I've been talking about just now. So Ru says 100% win rate, 4-0, and it was banned 45 times. So basically, when it was played, it won, and then you got 45 bans. You have Chinese banned 8 times, 14-1. Again, very good tournaments civilization. It can be played on water, it can be played on any map. That's the great part about it. Byzantine, 12 bans, played 22 times. It has 82% win rate. Ottoman, and this is where you gotta take a look at the stats, right? It has 80% win rate, but it was only played 5 times with 0 bans, so not a very scary civ, right? And there you go, Jushi Legacy 0, and you have Ayubid at 27% win rate, but it was banned 38 times. So most likely the times that it was played, it's because people let it through to the people that maybe they thought wouldn't be able to play it or whatever. Now these stats are not balance problems. They are problems of people either not knowing how to deal with something or simply not having the knowledge or APM to deal with something. So Ayubid is right now at the top. This is one of those where it overlaps. At the top level, Ayubid is considered, you know, top civ, and it has the highest win rate. But why is no one complaining about it? Genuinely, this is a genuine question. Why are people focused right now, HRE and English? Why are people not complaining about Delhi, OTD, right? Why is nobody complaining about Ayubid? And we've seen the same thing. If you guys remember, couple of months back, JD had a 55% win rate or 54% win rate. There was posts every day. Nerf, she's unbeatable, broken, needs to be changed, broken. And then at 56% win rate was Ottoman and Ayubid. I don't know if you guys remember that. Nobody was talking about them though. It was all about JD, which had lower win rate than them. So why is that? It's because when you lose to certain civs, it feels worse, right? When you lose to English longbow, it feels lame, it feels cheesy, and it's annoying, and you can lose like this to it, right? They can deny your wood and you're suddenly dead. Ayubid is very similar to Abbasid. With Ayubid, a unit doesn't just come and kill half of your villager, right? It's a slower build-up. They have very strong economy, very strong timings, but it doesn't feel unfair, right? It feels like the game went at a steady pace. You both macroed, and then he won a fight, and you lost the game. JD, the main complaint about JD is that it was annoying to play against the hero. So people were very focused on JD because it felt silly to lose to a hero. It felt silly when she levels up, she just mows down your units, and it's the way you were losing sucks, and it's very hard to play against JD. It was very hard to, and I'm pretty sure even now it's probably really hard to play against JD in lower leagues because if you lose too many units against her, she levels up and you're feeding her for XP and yada yada, and it kind of snowballs. I think right now there's probably a lot of burgers going in Gold League, a lot of burgers, and I'm assuming what people are doing is they're rushing Castle with HRE. And they're either burgering or they're rushing Imperial and then making like bomber towers. So why is this overpowered? Why is this strong? Why do we see so many complaints about it? Because this gameplay from HRE is very unique. It is very specific, similar to longbows, similar to JD Hero. You cannot just go to TC and then play whatever you're doing, because HRE will be in castle, is going to take all the relics, or they're going to go burger and just kill you immediately. So you need a specific response. And most players in casual level gameplay, whatever you want to call it, they're not very good at adjusting their style. They're not very good at adjusting their builds, because they don't play it full time. They don't play it for a living, right? There's 16 civs, they gotta learn all the matchup, and now there's this new thing they gotta adjust to, because you cannot just do the same thing. It's just not gonna work. And whenever you do lose against HRE, it kind of feels, if you lose to Burger, it kind of feels cheap, right? You went to TC, and then Men-at-Arms come, and now they have marching drills, and they got +1 ranged armor, and they're just mowing you down one by one. And it feels unfair, and it feels dumb. And that kind of play is easy to execute, but it's a lot harder to stop. The way you stop HRE Fast Castle or Fast Imp, you have to be the one that's aggressive, no matter which civ you're playing. So it doesn't matter if you're playing Abbasid or Ayubid or Malian or whatever, you have to be the aggressor. If you look at the win rates, the civs in in Gold League that are doing well against HRE are Ayubid, which is also very good at rushing castle, and it puts pressure with the military wing. OTD, I don't know why, don't ask me. JD, that can also put early pressure. Malian, which is very good civ against HRE in general. And then all these other ones, and French also, they have negative win rate, which is, I'm assuming, because they're getting pressured early, and HRE's castle is delayed, and they maybe run out of food, and they run into a lot of problems. But against these more boom civs or more passive civs, they have very, very good win rate. So if you look against Abbasid, they have positive win rate. Against English, I don't really know what they have a good win rate. I would imagine that English in lower leagues would do well against HRE, but maybe not. Against Ottoman is now very slow, so they kind of have all the time in the world to do their thing. Against Rus, and against China, 56%, because I'm assuming most Chinese players just go to TC and end up dying. So what is the solution to this? The end goal is the game will never, ever be balanced around low leagues. It simply won't. Every competitive game is balanced around the top level, but the devs should take in consideration some things being easier or harder to execute. Because an HRE Burger Rush is very easy to execute, but it requires very, very specific response to it, otherwise you're dead, which makes it very annoying and frustrating to play against. The balance will always be different, if you want to call it balance, at the low, casual level gameplay and at pro level gameplay, and they will always have different problems. If I make a top 5 civs, those 5 civs are never going to be top 5 in gold or plat or diamond, even in Conqueror 1 or 2 or low 3, because it's just different ways of playing the game, different ways of reacting to things, and so on and so forth. The best thing that devs can do is they can make some civs harder to execute or play, and some civs they can make easier to play. But that's about it. I'll give you a dumb example. I'm not saying that devs should do this, but one of the things that China is very hard for low levels is managing Imperial Officials, right? They have a very hard time keeping up Imperial Officials on food, on gold, on wood. So one of the fixes that devs can do is they can have a mode for Imperial Officials to auto-supervise economy resources. So they can maybe supervise the wrong buildings, but if you had a button that made, just like they collect taxes, if you had a button where they just go and supervise an economic building, that would up the win rate of Chinese in low leagues, because they're not using Imperial Officials well at all. So even if they are 20% of the time better than the gold player would do, China would have a better win rate, because that's one thing that they're struggling with. I'm just giving you an example. But not every civ can be balanced like that, and not every civ will be easy to deal with or harder to deal with. Matter of fact is, some civs are just annoying the way they play. Some civs are very hard to play. Some civs are more boom oriented, some civs are more passive. And then you have some civs that require specific responses or have unique mechanics, like Byzantine, for example. It has very unique mechanics with mercenaries and stone and oil and all that. It is a lot more complicated to play than, for example, English or French. So, with that being said, I urge everyone, stop looking at tier lists for your gameplay. And I'm saying this as someone who is making these once a month. I love making them. I love discussing. I love making tier lists for you guys. But they are just to discuss the top level gameplay and just for entertainment purposes only, right? It's something you can maybe strive for, like, oh, that's Civ is S tier. Maybe I should learn that if I want to get all the way to Conquer. But it is not a reflection of your own gameplay or reflection of your own league, whichever that league is. If I had to make a Civ tier list for like casual level gameplay, I would probably put civs that are unique or civs that are easier to execute, not civs that are good. You can see here, in Diamond, Rusa is the lowest win rate on ladder, right? It's not even one of the most played civs. The highest win rate civ in Diamond is Delhi, which again, you never hear anyone complaining about Delhi, right? That Delhi is overpowered or unstoppable or whatever. I would probably say that the strongest civs in lower leagues are going to be civs like Ayubid, like HRE that can rush castle, and if you don't catch it in time, you're going to lose the game. I would say civs like JD, civs like English, even civs like Mongol with tower rushes are always going to be performing, I think, better because they either require specific response or they have unique units that are hard to deal with, and that's it. Or they're just easy to play, right? Like, I don't think JD and English are very complicated to play when you're starting out, which is why they're, French, English are kind of the basic civs. And I don't think that unless there's like severe, imbalance where you're just making one unit and beating everything, I don't think that civs like Byzantine or Japanese or, I don't know, like Malian is ever going to be, or Chinese is ever going to be a top civ at low level gameplay, simply because the way the civs are designed. So, do I think HRE is overpowered? No, I don't. I think it is strong at lower levels, for sure, because of all the things that I just said. At the top level, it's not, because players know how to punish it. And the conclusion for all of this, whenever people ask me, what's the best civ I can pick? I'm a new player. What civ do I pick? I don't know, right? There's 16 civs. They're all different. What you should pick is not what's good, is not what's S tier, is not what's A tier. You should pick whatever you like, because realistically, let's say that this is the win rate and you are now in Diamond. 45 to 55% win rate is still within balance. If a civ would have like 30% win rate, I would say probably maybe skip that, or 25-30%. I would say that's pretty bad. Probably needs help. But if the civ is 45 to 55% plus 5 minus 5% margin, I think that's more than fine, right? You can play that. There ain't no problem with it. And the best part is, when you're in lower leagues, there's always something to improve and work towards. There's always something you could have done better. And there's so much info out there that you can learn from, that just play what you enjoy playing. The civ balance at the top level will in no way impact your gameplay for the same reasons, right? And if you're struggling against a specific civ, it's the same thing. Try to watch what the top players are doing against it. Try to figure out what you're doing wrong or what you could do better. But at the end of the day, no matter which civ you play, the matchups are never going to be a 50-50% win rate, because that's crazy. And considering we have 16 civilizations and all the civs are within plus 5 minus 5% in the overall win rates, is insane. Like, I don't think people realize how insane that is. In StarCraft, we had 3 races. And, sure, it's a different game and the races were different from one another. But the win rates in like were never within +5, -5% throughout the whole game. And in AoE 4, unless we get a new patch or something, and then some Civ is super broken, it's like 70%. It's usually fixed very, very fast, and the Civ win rates remain within normal range. So, yeah, what you should play whatever you like, and learn how to play it. Don't lose to something and be like, oh, I'm gonna switch to that Civ because it's more broken. If you like going HRE castle rushing, then do that. If you wanna be Byzantine oiler and make farms and get oil, go for that. If you like trading, go Mongol. That's it. Because one thing I actually learned from StarCraft and from AoE 4 is you will actually perform and play the stuff that you enjoy a lot more. You're gonna play it better, and you're gonna have, because you're having fun, thus you're gonna win more. So it's not about picking what Civ is the best, it's picking what Civ is the best for you. But that's it. If you're watching this on YouTube, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little discussion. I was thinking about making more of these videos, like maybe once a week, just picking a little topic. Maybe just picking a topic from like the forums or Twitch chat questions that I get very often. Like, another one that I wanted to make is talk about mega random and all the cheaters and hackers and all that, and my enjoyment of FA. So if you're interested about that, let me know. But YouTube gamers, thank you for watching. I wish you a great night. Twitch gamers, we will say goodbye right here as well. Peace out.